Hello and welcome into the KE Report. Shad and Corey here, getting an update from Erik Wetterling, also known as the Hedgeless Horseman. And we'll put a link to the Hedgeless Horseman website down below so you can follow along with Erik's work. And Erik, always great getting you on the show here at the end of the year. It's nice to kind of look at what catalysts there are out there. And it's kind of a quiet period for most of the resource sector, but you've not been quiet. You've been very hard at work on a lengthy article. I think you mentioned it was almost a 73-page article off mic. And it's on First Nordic Metals, traded on the TSXV under the ticker FNM. And you did a deep dive into all of the mineral resources in place, not just at Barsele, but the potential exploration upside at their Storjukten and Paulbacken and Klippen areas of interest for exploration this year. You got into some of the potential of them listing on the Swedish exchange. You really got into a ton of information. I know you worked hard on this and got it out to the market, I think, a week or two ago. We haven't talked to you since then. So give us a quick update on this article, and we'll put a link to it down below so people can actually click on it and follow along.
Yeah, sure. I spent around a month writing this, and I've been collecting data for several months before that. And I kept finding new stuff, basically. As a Swede, I'm not even used to investing in a Swedish project because I don't really invest in Swedish listed juniors, and they tend to have the assets in Sweden. So this is kind of unique from a lot of angles, I was going to say, but it is, in my opinion, my biased opinion, I think this is one of the best risk reward that I have come across in the gold sector. And of course, that's very much helped by the fact that I think the Barsele deposit is a very solid deposit. And I go at length through all the reasons why I think that. And with the gold price being where it is, and it's very advanced. So it's like the margin of safety and the sunk cost and all that. And of course, Agnico Eagle has been the operator for 9+ years now. So everything basically has been done by the best gold major in the world. So they're going to be doing everything by the book. They're going to be doing everything basically better than any junior because they have an unlimited budget, or at least the last few years, let's say. So I think the margin of safety is absolutely great. I think the fact that they have a 45% minority stake right now, I think that's one of the main reasons why it's been boring, plus the fact that Agnico hasn't really drilled that much. But there's been a lot of stuff happening, like Agnico taking a big stake, etc. I go through all that as well. But it's the unique risk reward in the sense that I think Barsele is at least a tier 2 deposit. If you use a $1,700 gold price for the resource estimate, it's already 3 million ounces. Ikkari for Rupert is 4.2, I think, and they have like a 900 million market cap. I think this could very much go to 5 million at least, just for Barsele. And then I go through the exploration potential, which is, probably top 3 of any gold junior that I know of. The anomalies are huge. They already made a discovery at Ida. They drilled 6 holes and they hit 22.5 meters, so 2.4 grams per ton. And the Barsele discovery hole was actually 29 meters, so 2.1 grams per ton. So I think that's a 54 gram meter hole for Ida after just 6 holes, and the Barsele discovery hole was 60 gram meters. So Ida already, based on the assay results, obviously look unusually good because statistically it's very hard to even get that kind of result from just 6 holes, and it's akin to what they found at Barsele. Then you have even bigger anomalies that are basically yet to be drilled, and they are fully funded for up to 30,000 meters or more. So it's going to be one of the biggest, I think, drill campaigns in the gold junior space as well. So it's like it has so many angles. There's like usually you have to pick one. It's like if you want big exploration potential, you typically take a lot of risk, meaning that the company don't actually have a deposit already. So it's like there's a risk that, they won't find anything. Or you have a very mature junior with an advanced project, but they have maybe not that much in terms of exploration potential or money to do exploration. In this one, I would say you get both, and there's many reasons for it that I go through. And also, one of perhaps the biggest kicker actually is the fact that this is a company that's focused in Sweden. They also have a Finnish project. but it's focused in Sweden. And I don't think Canadians or North American investors care much for Sweden, because when was the last time they invested in a mining project in Sweden? Probably most people that have never done that. So it's like there's no reference or anything. So it's very like the uncertainty is high because you're not familiar with it. But the Swedes, 95% of them, from what I've read, only invest in Swedish listed stocks. So it's like, to me, I see a potentially huge sentiment arbitrage or preference arbitrage if they get this listed in Sweden, because Swedes actually love to invest. We invest more money in stocks than any other country in Europe, I think, on a per capita basis or per family basis. So avid stock buyers. And we also prefer to buy Swedish listed ones. And we're also, of course, like every other country, you would pay a premium to have the project in your home country. So you would get the highest premium from Swedes, I bet. And right now, the Swedes who would put the highest premium on it can't buy it or won't buy it. And the Canadians don't care about it. So if that thing changes, so it opens up for, let's say, 95% of the target audience, I think things could get really, really fun, and then have that coincide with, a 30,000 meter drill campaign and more people finding out about the case. Because like I still don't see many people actually talking about this case. And it's like, to me, I think it's one of the best risk rewards I've ever seen.
So, Erik, in terms of the near-term news flow, what really could drive this stock does seem like it will be this drill program, or the multiple drill programs that are ongoing. When do you think we'll start to see some of the results trickle out of these programs? One started back in October, and then one recently started mid this month. So when do you think we'll see some results that could be that catalyst?
I would expect a lot of bot results and a lot of soil sample results to come out, because they're basically carpet bombing the rest of this insanely huge land package. I mean, they get 100 kilometers of strike. So they already have these fat anomalies, but they're looking for even more anomalies. So I expect that to come in maybe in the next 1 or 2 months, maybe very soon, because, I mean, most companies prefer to not put it out, at the end of the year when there's tax loss selling and stuff like that. So I would expect that stuff to come trickling in. And that's obviously also going to dictate where they would want to do the diamond drilling that they're fully funded for. So maybe the diamond drilling would start in maybe 3 months, something like that. So in the meantime, it might be, I mean, to most people, it's boring. I mean, for me, it's just so cheap that it's like, in my opinion, if people saw what I saw, it wouldn't trade at this price already. So I am patient from that sense. But I would think the more exciting stuff maybe 3 months away, unless they actually do a Swedish listing before that. And I actually have no idea what could happen if that happens. And I think with time, it could prove to be one of the most important catalysts. So I would say drilling, the big stuff, 3 months away. Listing, I mean, I'm hoping for Q1.
Well, Erik, let's dive in a little bit more to the drilling side, because we don't know about the Swedish listing, when it's actually going to happen, the timeline on it. But as far as the drilling, that bot drilling is base of till. That's usually shallow, and it's really still more of a targeting exercise. So when they're doing this at the Nippes target at Storjuktan or the Ida target at Paulbacken, I guess the idea would be that then, like as you mentioned, to follow up with diamond drilling, and that's really what gets the market most animated. So do you want to see them pick one area like either Paulbacken or Storjuktan or even Klippen and really take a deep dive? Or there's still other targets along this 100-kilometer belt that they haven't even got to yet. Do you want to see them keep doing more targeting, or do you want to see them dig a deeper well in one of these areas?
Yeah, I would kind of like to see them do both. I mean, obviously the targets that we already know about, I mean, they're so large that you have to test them. And what the thing is with soil anomalies is that because there's been, glaciers and all that, so it's not the best in terms of actually targeting where to drill. That I think you would use geophysics and bot drilling, because bot drilling actually, as you said, gets into the bedrock. So bot drilling will be, I think, the main tool to actually spot where to drill, and that's what they base their drilling on at Ida, where they actually hit almost a Barsele type discovery hole within the first 6 holes. So that's going to be targeting that. So basically, I think they need to test Nippa, Storjuktan, Harpsund, etc. And Ida, of course, follow up that discovery. But I would like to see them actually, carpet bomb with soil sampling, etc. So you might expand. I think Taj said in an interview he expects there to be maybe 2 to 3 additional targets. Who knows? I'm hoping they will be up to par with the targets they already have. So in that case, they have a exploration runway that can last for a long time. And here in Sweden, the critical threshold for success is pretty much as low as it can get, given the fact that somebody just put a 30,000 ounce mine into production, and there's a 370,000 ounce mine that was mined out a few years ago. So basically, if you find 200,000 ounces here, that's like tangible success. You could get something for that, especially if you have a hub and spoke model where Barsele, which is already big enough to be a standalone deposit. So if you have the hub there, and then, I don't know, if you found 1 million ounces somewhere, that's for sure going to get mined. Assuming permitting and all that, because you would already have built something at Barsele. So again, that's what makes this not unique, but it's like, not only is the exploration potential huge, it also has some of the lowest threshold for success there is. Plus, it's in a tier 1 jurisdiction where you would get or should get a premium on any success. And it has, it's a low cost mining country. It's like, and a low tax country. So it's like every ounce, if you put the identical deposit here versus Canada, you would have better margins and higher profits in Sweden. So it's like, yeah, it's supercharged on a lot of fronts, in my opinion.
Okay, well, we're still a long way away from them even issuing a resource on any of these projects. As we're talking about, they're doing basic till drilling, very much like scout drilling here, early on exploration. If they're not going to be diamond drilling for, let's say, 3, 6, 9 months, what about that Barsele asset? What is happening here? Because that's been under that JV for years. I don't even know how many years. What is it, Erik? 6, 7 years that's under JV. What progress has been made at that Barsele asset?
The JV was entered in 2015, I believe. So that's around 9 years.
10 years ago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. 10 years, of operating the project. And back then, when they entered that JV, Agnico was a $5 billion company. Today, it's a $60 billion company. And they started off strong. I think it was actually a very hot stock in like 2016, 17, 18, because Agnico did a lot of drilling. Then as far as I understand, they had some trouble up in Canada with Nunavut, and they put all their focus there basically. And again, fast forward to today, where they've just grown and grown and grown, made multi-billion-dollar acquisitions. Today, I would say Barsele is too small for Agnico. If you listen to, and I've listened to a lot of Agnico interviews, they want to be in areas where they see multiple mines mining for multiple decades. And that you can't really say at this point that that's going to be the case in the Gold Line belt, because so far there's only one big deposit, and that's Barsele. But it also, I think, the recent deal with Ojärvi, where Agnico took 13% at that time of the company, and that was after they put out the news releases on the Storjuktan and Harpsund targets, for example. So to me, I think, or I hope, and I write this in the article, the only thing that makes sense to me is consolidation, because Agnico either would want to, how would they have success here? Either they find something, basically First Nordic and Agnico, I guess, but First Nordic has the 100% owned targets that are like the blue sky targets. Either they find something that even Agnico would want to mine, multiple mines, multiple decades, like the biggest of the big, or how is Agnico going to get anything for it? Let's say there's only Barsele. Okay, they wouldn't want to mine Barsele, I don't think, unless it turns out to 10 million ounces or something. But okay, how do they get out of it? Well, First Nordic will probably want to sell to a mid-tier in that case. So it's like, take a 19.9% position or whatever in First Nordic, let First Nordic get operatorship, try to prove or disprove if this is an Agnico-sized belt. If it isn't, you can sell it to a mid-tier, whatever, who would love to have a Barsele asset. If it's big enough for Agnico, well, Agnico has a 20% discount on everything.
Well, Erik, we'll keep following along with First Nordic, and we do have some plans to get the team on the show at the beginning of the year and get an update on all the different exploration, targeting, base of till, and then eventually where the diamond drilling is going to be happening. So we'll keep following along with First Nordic. But in Sweden, it's kind of topical. There's been another company that's also trying to get listed on the Swedish exchange, and that is District Metals, traded on the TSXV under the ticker DMX. And they also have another catalyst in that the government of Sweden has finally, it appears, lifted the moratorium on uranium exploration and possibly extraction. So I know that's been something that's been a question mark for the last year or two, and that has been a little bit of fuel to get people looking at District. So yet another junior operating in Sweden. What do you make of that?
Right. I mean, I think, first of all, it just shows that Sweden is one of the few Western jurisdictions that's actually have become more and more pro-mining. I mean, you listen to Ebba Busch, she talks about the importance of mining every week, basically. And so that's also what I go through in my article on First Nordic. So I love to see it. I mean, with all the stuff happening around the world, I mean, Sweden has, I think, the largest uranium inferred resources in Europe. So it's like it makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of doubt if, given the low grade of the actual uranium, very low grade stuff, but it's a polymetallic alum shale type deposit, and it's huge. I mean, there's another company right next to District Metals Beacon deposit that also has like 1 billion tons or something. So it's like, for all intents and purposes, this stuff is endless. Will it actually work? I mean, there's studies out there that suggest that it could very much work. And then, of course, the problem is that, okay, if you can't actually extract or take up the uranium, why even bother to do anything with the shale deposits? And that's been the hindrance, basically. And now, I mean, there's obviously District Metals, the stock price, it's been front running the fact that this lifting of the moratorium is going to happen. And as far as I understand, when it reaches this far in the process, there's a very high chance that this will actually get lifted. And I think there's huge pressure from Europe to do so, because let's face it, I mean, we have the uranium. B, I mean, you're not going to put a mine in the Netherlands, for example, or Belgium. I mean, Sweden is one of few countries in Europe where there's actually a lot of free space in a sense. Now, there's also, of course, a stigma around uranium. I mean, uranium is like, I guess, the dirtiest word there is. So I don't know what's going to happen, especially if they list in Sweden. There's another news release recently where they have received conditional approval to list in Sweden. I know people in Sweden who thinks it can get really fun. Personally, I'm just going to be interested to see what happens, because this might play out for, again, it's like when it officially gets listed, maybe that's up to 12 months from now. And when the listing will get through, I don't know. But I think these things obviously together are like the main unlockers, let's say, of the case. Because if the ban doesn't get lifted, there is no case for the shale. And I also think that the Swedish listing could really supercharge anything that happens. But again, it's like it will be a multiplier effect on the fact that the ban, or could be a multiplier effect after the ban is lifted.
I think it'll be so interesting to see when the company, or if they even get listed on that First North exchange. But look, that they do have the approval. So it comes down to, I think, some other exchanges. Erik, since it sounds like Sweden is so friendly to mining, you live in Sweden, you're very active in this sector. What companies are operating in Sweden? Can you give us the lay of the land of what mining is happening there, and the large companies, at least, that are in country?
There's basically 3 big players. Soon there's going to be 2, because Lundin Mining has a big Zinkgruvan deposit, and they're selling that to Boliden. And Boliden has the Aitik and the Garpenberg mines, and they will now be the owner of Zinkgruvan. And then you have the big state-owned company LKAB, who basically has all the iron ore mining in northern Sweden. Those are huge underground deposits, but those are pretty much the main players. I mean, yes, BHP bought a junior in Sweden last year. So, I mean, I took that as a good sign that more companies are looking. And I forgot what company it was. They're not mining in Sweden, but they recently did that JV. I think it's an 800 million market cap producer that's focused in Europe. They did an earning with some junior company in Sweden. So it looks, I mean, there's signs that the rest of the, let's say, mining sector is starting to wake up that, things are getting better, because Sweden used to be a pretty good jurisdiction. Then it got crappier. And that's when Boliden basically said, oh, we're not going to do an exploration because we can't get anything done here. So that's basically what seems to be going away in a sense, because there's plenty of exploration potential and all that. I mean, the Gold Line Belt, for example, that has seen, I don't remember how many drill holes, but that's nothing compared to a Greenstone Belt in Canada. But to your point, the big players are basically, or have been, Lundin Mining, which, Swedish roots, Boliden, Swedish-based, and LKAB, state-owned company. And it was only actually I think it was 1992 or something, that Sweden even opened up to foreign investments. And for quite a bit of that time, it was still pretty bad even for the Swedish players. So it is kind of a new frontier, even though we've been mining for like 1,000 years. But it's like, from a modern standpoint, Sweden is kind of underexplored and underexploited.
Well, Erik, another company we've talked about in the past that also is operating in Sweden is Mawson Gold. Now, Mawson Gold has their Southern Cross asset in Australia. Mawson Gold, not too long ago, spun out Mawson Finland, some of their other gold and cobalt assets there. But they've also recently spun out their hard rock uranium assets in Sweden. What do you think this portends as far as the anticipation of this moratorium on uranium extraction and exploration being lifted in Sweden? How does that tie in with the news from District Metals?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that, as we talked about off mic, Mawson basically was a Swedish-focused uranium company, if I'm not mistaken, pre-2018. It was 2018 when the moratorium was put in place. That also kind of shows what an incredible U-turn it would be to lift a moratorium that's only 6 years old. So, when I saw the news release here on December 13, Mawson announces record date and effective date of spin-out of uranium assets, then it's like, okay, they must have a very good feeling that this is actually going to be, the moratorium will be lifted, because it makes no sense to spin out something that's worthless, right? So then I had a good feeling that we were going to get this from the Swedish government. So that, I might be totally wrong here, but I think they had like 100 million market cap when they were pretty much focusing on Swedish uranium back in the day. And I'm pretty sure most of their uranium assets now, the hard rock ones, as you said, they're like the assets they had back then. So they picked up their old assets again. So it's like they definitely know what the best hard rock uranium deposits would be, and they basically reacquired them or picked them up or staked them again. So this is a good thing for obviously Mawson shareholders, where it's like, I don't know what the spin out could fetch in value if it gets spun out and maybe also enter to the Swedish stock exchange, but I think it could be something at least. So it's like, if you're a Mawson Gold shareholder, this might not be something you should totally ignore.
All right. Well, we'll keep following along with Sweden as a country as far as how it relates to the mining sector. A lot of things going on with all three companies, First Nordic, with District Metals, and with Mawson Gold spin out of the hard rock uranium assets. Seems like there's a lot of things happening on the legislative side, but also on the potential listing of some of these companies. So it could be an exciting sector to follow along with, and maybe more North American investors can tune in to what's going on over in Europe, because Europe still needs a critical mineral supply chain. And it looks like Sweden's one of the few countries that's very amenable to mining. So I appreciate you highlighting a couple of these companies in their recent news, Erik. If people want to follow along with Erik's work, definitely click on the link below this editorial. It takes you over to the Hedgeless Horseman website. And Erik, as always, looking forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, guys. And I'm biased. I own shares of all companies mentioned, and District only is a sponsor of mine. Twice biased.